This is going to be long and complicated, but I need to get it off my chest. A lot has happened to me in the last few months, and I'm not sure if what I'm doing is the right thing, and I just feel very alone. I'm 17 years old, and I live with my father. My mom passed away less than a year ago, and my dad betrayed her by moving in with her sister and kicking me out. However, my cousin's secret letter revealed the truth. I believe she had been in and out of the hospital since I was 1 year old. The past few years have been extremely difficult for our family, and since Dad was the only provider, I had to take on the role of primary caregiver for my mother. Her sister, Aunt Edna, who is 38 years old, would occasionally come and help, but mostly it was just Mom and me. I did my best to take care of her, do it all over again without complaining, because I just miss her a lot. And it feels terrible not to have her around anymore. It has been a while, but I still cannot forget her, even though everyone around me has. At times, it seems like she never existed, and the same is true for my father. I'm not sure why, but I don't go to bed without talking to her and telling her about my day. Since I was a child, when it was just the three of us and the house was filled with love and happiness, I observed them being deeply in love. I don't know why he is this way, but he has changed a lot. It didn't take him long to move on from Mom. He took down all of her photos, doesn't talk about her, and doesn't have any of her mementos with him. Then, when Mom became ill, everything abruptly faded away, and I recall that by the end, Dad had become extremely irritable and snappy. And I shouldn't be saying or feeling this, but it seemed like he was waiting for her to pass away because he began staying late at work and avoiding her. It was terrible to watch, but fortunately, Mom was too exhausted to recognize that her own husband was ignoring her. I did my best to fill in for him, but I don't think I did a very good job. And then my dad did something that no one could understand. I don't think I've ever felt so angry and betrayed by anything in my life, and I doubt I ever will. How could he move on from Mom so quickly? He had been married for 20 years. How could he have replaced her with someone else? Not just anyone, but her own sister. My father told me that it was disgusting. I never imagined he had started dating Aunt Edna a few weeks after Mom passed away. Expect me to understand now? But when I'm older, I'll understand. But for now, I just need to respect his decision. I told him that I detested him and would never respect his choice to meet up with his deceased wife's sister. I asked him how he was able to move on so easily, but he remained silent. We had a heated argument, during which I called him a lot of names. And all he could say to defend himself was I told him that I would understand his situation someday, and that I hoped I would never become a man like him. I know my words hurt him, but I wanted him to feel the same pain I was feeling, the same pain my mother would have felt if she had learned about what was happening just months after her death. It was disgusting and vile, and everyone was making me feel bad. I wanted to slap her at that moment. But I told her that this was not a breakup that I needed to move on from, that this was my mother that she was talking about, and that I would never be able to move on from her death. I also told Aunt Edna that just because she tried to talk to me about it, I should be happy that this is happening in the family, so that she can help me move on better. I felt like the villain, because I wasn't accepting their relationship. She told me that she didn't want to replace anyone to start a new family because she had replaced Mom in Dad's life, but that didn't mean she could do the same in mine. I told her that I didn't want a new family because my family consisted of my father and mother, and if he decided to have a new family with her so quickly at the expense of my mother's memories, I didn't want to be a part of this family. They both tried to persuade. My father tried to talk to me several times, but I refused to move, and it became so bad that I would lock myself in my room all the time and only come out to eat or go to school. Eventually, he stopped trying at all, and it seemed like we were stuck in a stalemate in the house. We didn't talk to each other and just kept to ourselves. It was toxic and suffocating, and I know Dad was hoping that I would give in so he could pressure me into accepting their relationship. But I refused to let it happen. I knew he didn't need my consent to do anything, but I knew I couldn't accept this, especially so quickly. I had assumed this was the lowest he could go, but a month and a half ago, my aunt and my father's new girlfriend shocked me when we moved into the house. Things had not yet become normal between Dad and me, and I was unaware of what he was doing. One morning, I woke up to a lot of noise and saw Aunt Edna carrying boxes and suitcases. I asked her what was going on, but she remained silent and went to her room. I then went to Dad to ask him what was going on in the house, and his only response was, "Oh, so now you talk to me." I felt like someone was strangling me, so I moved most of Mom's boxes to my room in secret. I wanted to punch him right there, but I knew I couldn't because it was disgusting. I knew what was happening, but I just didn't want to accept it. This evil woman wasn't content with simply winning over Mom's husband. Now she had to take over her house, and her memories too. And that was my only comfort. I knew that Aunt Edna would destroy Mom's belongings if she had the chance, and she tried to do so as soon as she got her hands on them. She repeatedly asked, "Dad, where Mom's belongings were kept?" And he insisted that I had them in my room. She has attempted to enter my room on various occasions, under various pretexts, but I simply won't let her in because I can't bear her being in the same area. As my mother, I lock my room when I'm at school to prevent her from tampering with my belongings. I just want to be able to leave this place. 2 weeks ago, Aunt Edna's daughter Rachel, a 19-year-old woman, came home. Rachel and I have a good relationship. We're close in age, so we spent a lot of time together growing up. It was like having a real sister. However, when Mom became ill, I spent the majority of my time taking care of her, so Rachel and I kind of drifted apart. We kept in touch, but we weren't as close as we once were. Aunt Edna moved Rachel into the house 2 weeks ago, and I was glad to see her, because I thought I would now have someone to talk to. But Dad told me that I needed to stay at a friend's house for a few days until they worked things out because there wasn't enough space in the house for 4 people. I stared at him in shock and asked him why he had let Rachel come here if the house could not accommodate 4 people, which it never really did. He explained that Rachel was having problems and that it was our responsibility as family to help her. I replied that I was his family too, just like Mom, but he had no problem dropping us off. The minute Aunt Edna entered his life, he said nothing about it, but told me that I needed to stop being difficult and make concessions. However, I wasn't worried about myself. I could have crashed at a couple of friends' places. Instead, I was worried about my mom's belongings, because I knew that with me gone, Aunt Edna would try to do something to that, and I wouldn't be able to stop it, and my dad. Or he would be forced to take action. To be honest, nothing this man does really surprises me anymore. He has descended to such a horrible level that now I expect him to be a disgusting piece of crap. Doesn't care enough about me or his deceased wife to stop Aunt Edna. I was so worried about my mother's belongings that I went to my room and locked myself in. Edna kept hammering on the door for a few hours, urging me to come out so we could talk, but I ignored her. I was so mortified by the possibility that I didn't leave my room that day, and my paranoia was getting to new heights. The following day, I got up pretty early, locked my room, and went downstairs to get something to eat. To my complete surprise, my dad was waiting for me on the couch, sleeping. It seemed like the moment he heard me, he got up and said he wanted to talk to me. I told him I didn't want to talk to him, so I tried to get something from the refrigerator and run back upstairs. But he blocked my path. I tried to get past him, but he blocked my path. Ineffectively, he informed me that I had a week to leave because they could no longer accommodate me, and that he was picking Rachel over me because I was a rude, unappreciative brat who didn't appreciate what he was doing for me, so he would simply stop helping me. He said that the most he could do out of kindness was to send me some money to cover my expenses, but that I had to leave and make room for his. I was crying because I didn't even recognize this man and thought I had only lost one parent. However, that's when I realized my other parent didn't even consider me his child. Instead, he saw me as a person, or rather, a burden that he could ignore at any time. I knew that I was helpless in front of him and that I had to listen to him, because after all, this was his house, and he was the one providing for me, feeding me, and taking care of me. He had no obligation to me at any point in time, and I had to accept that he could stop helping me because I would soon turn 18, so he could use that as justification as well. I know it is hypocritical and biased because he is willing to house and support a 19-year-old Rachel, but not his own son. I'm not sure what has gotten into him, or maybe he was always this self-centered and repulsive person, and it only took this tragedy and trauma to see him for who he truly is. I remained silent, went back to my room, and sobbed uncontrollably because I was being abandoned by my only living parent. And even though everything he had done to me over the past few months had hurt, we hadn't been speaking, and I had started to think that perhaps I didn't matter to him. But I had hoped that one day things would return to normal, and we could once more be father and son. It is obvious that this will never happen, and I feel foolish for thinking that this was even possible. He didn't love me, and he didn't give a damn about what happened to me as long as he could stay with Aunt Edna. I had no idea where I would go or where I would end up. Keep all of Mom's belongings. I was only willing to keep 2 pairs of clothes for myself, but I couldn't part with anything because they are the only remnants of Mom that I have left, and I will never be able to let them go. A few hours later, I heard a knock on the door, which I didn't want to answer, but it was Rachel, who said she wanted to help me and that I needed to speak with Grandpa. She then slid a letter under my door as soon as I could, and if I'm being honest, I didn't trust her. I know she was a good person, but it had been years since we had actually communicated or bonded, and she was ultimately her mother's daughter, so her loyalty was to her mother and no one else. For this reason, I was very skeptical, but I also had no other choice, so I chose to speak with my grandfather. I mean, how much worse could it get? Could it get any worse than it was right now? I called my grandfather, who lives in a different state, and began talking to him on the phone. When I heard his voice, he asked me what was wrong, and I managed to put together some coherent sentences to explain what was going on. It took me a while to explain everything, and I also told him that Rachel had asked me to call him. He was thrilled to hear from me, and had been pleading with my dad to get me to speak with him for several months. But Dad insisted that I wasn't interested in doing so. He had wanted to call me, but hadn't given him my number, because he had lost his phone and all of his contacts. He assured me that he would take care of everything, and that I didn't need to worry, saying he would be flying down to my city shortly. He said that he would be in contact, and that I didn't need to worry about anything. But until he arrived, I had to make sure that I stayed in the house and didn't move out. He said that he would try to be here by next week, but if that didn't happen, he would let me know. He specifically instructed me not to leave the house until he arrived. I was both scared and relieved after speaking with him about not leaving Mom's belongings unattended or unlocked. I was relieved because I know he will take action and either get me out or make my father understand. And I was also relieved because it feels good and light to be able to talk to an elder. I've been an adult for a long time, and I just want the luxury of being a kid for a while. What would happen now? Grandpa has always been the jolly kind, and even though he lost his daughter, I don't think he will defend me in front of his other daughter. Right now, everything seems to be in disarray, and all I can do is wait for him to come and rescue me from this mess. My life has taken a drastic turn. I had no idea why Dad was acting this way before, but now that Grandpa is here and is taking care of things, I understand what's going on. A week ago, Grandpa asked me to meet him and gave me the address of the hotel where he was staying. He instructed me to gather all of Mom's belongings and promised to send a car. I moved both my belongings and Mom's belongings out and informed Dad and Aunt Edna that I was leaving Rachel. I was at work when I went to Grandpa's room in the hotel with everything. He began searching through it for something, and when he finally found it, it was a document. Not just any document, though. It was the papers of the house we currently live in. He then explained to me what was actually going on when Rachel and I were born. Grandpa had given us both expensive houses, I know, but he's loaded as I learned that he claimed to want to help us. And rather than putting money aside for college, he bought us houses. The house that is legally mine is the one I've lived in my entire life. But the problem was that, because Rachel and I were minors, it was under the legal guardianship of our respective mothers until we were 18. The houses were supposed to arrive when we turned 18. Rachel's house was officially transferred into her name a year ago, a few months after she turned 18. It's the same house that Aunt Edna and Rachel had been living in, and I don't blame Mom at all because she was very ill, and it might have slipped her mind. Why Dad didn't say anything to me is a different question entirely. The original plan for my house was for it to temporarily go to my other guardian, my father, until I turned 18. Grandpa believes that both Dad and Aunt Edna are conspiring to have the house legally transferred into their names, or simply stealing the paperwork before I turn 18, so that I am powerless to stop it. This is also why I asked Grandpa what had happened to Rachel's house, and he explained that the moment Rachel learned what her mother was up to, she kicked her out of the house, causing a huge rift between mother and daughter, but they haven't been getting along. Grandpa never told me about the house, and now it all makes sense why they kept trying to look through Mom's stuff, why Dad has been distant, and why Aunt Edna has suddenly arrived. Grandpa claimed that Rachel was worried about me, and even more. So, because Aunt Edna had moved in with Dad, she had been in constant contact with Grandpa, and they had decided that I needed to be moved out, and that I needed to know the truth about everything, which is why she had returned home. But no one suspected her. That seems odd to me because if that were the case, why had she come to live with us? Grandpa told me that Mom had actually started to suspect that Dad had designs on the house when she was ill, and that she had a suspicion that Dad was having an affair, but she did not know who it was. I believe it was Aunt Edna all along, when she called Grandpa and asked him to sit down. Aunt Edna believed that she was attempting to make amends. I asked Grandpa what we could do now, since I still had a few months before I turned 18. With her, and have the guardianship details of the house changed. As it stands, my dad is not the legal caretaker of the house until I turn 18. Mom changed the clause in the document without his knowledge, making Grandpa the caretaker. That was the document he was looking for, and my father was unaware that it existed, so all of his attempts to take over the house were futile because he had, I know this isn't the legal wording for it, but this is how Grandpa told me, and this is what I understand. In other words, Dad no longer has the right to be in the house, and my grandpa will do just that. He stated that he has made the decision to live with me in the house until I turn 18, and since he is currently the guardian, he will throw Dad and Aunt Edna out. I'm still a kid who lost his mom, and my family is troubled, so I don't want to get involved in legal issues either. I'm scared when he says that I couldn't believe that I have this kind of power over my dad, and to be honest, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I've given the reins to Grandpa, and I'm just going to do as he says, because I'm too tired from whatever has been going on, and I just need some peace. Grandpa said that I would follow his instructions. He assured me not to worry, and I just hope that these problems will go away on their own, because I don't think I have the capacity to handle any more drama or hurt. I'm utterly broken, and I just want to go out on date 2. We confronted Dad and Aunt Edna, who turned pale when they saw Grandpa and me together. Grandpa simply entered the house, and Dad attempted to object, but he quickly cut him off, brought his attorney along, and I could see that both Dad and Aunt Edna were quite anxious. Grandpa quickly informed Dad that he was the property's guardian for the upcoming months, and that he wanted to move here, which is why he was giving Dad a month's notice to vacate the property. My dad then got up and began yelling at Dad that he had no legal standing, and they exchanged very harsh words. My dad's jaw hit the floor when he showed him the copy of the new papers that Mom had made in secret. He claimed that they were fake, and that he didn't believe them. But Grandpa explained that Mom had the right to change the nominee whenever she wanted to, and she had done so, so Dad was left with no choice but to accept it. Dad couldn't believe this had happened, and neither could Aunt Edna Rachel, who was laughing, it seemed, that she was enjoying this whole meltdown, and that she came over to me for the first time to give me a hug. I gave her a hug in return, and thanked her for everything she had done for me. When Aunt Edna noticed this, she realized that Rachel had gone behind her back to help me, so she yanked her arm and gave her a hard slap across the face, leaving Rachel with a cut on her face. The badass girl that Aunt Edna sank to the ground in tears as she began to smile and declare that she was going to press charges. She insisted that she couldn't do this because she was her daughter, but I could see the hatred in Rachel's eyes. She wouldn't let Aunt Edna get away with it. Dad realized that this was turning into a big show, and that he and his little girlfriend were on the wrong side of it. He began to make amends at this point, and attempted to pull me aside so we could speak. But Grandpa stopped him, saying that since he had made it clear that his allegiance was to Aunt Edna, and not to me, there was no need to speak now. Dad claimed that this was between a father and son, and that Grandpa had no right to get involved. I told Dad that Grandpa had every right to get involved, and that I didn't want to speak to him in any way. Could say to me now would make a difference. And at last all the repressed rage spilled out. I called him every name in the book, and told him how I truly felt about him, telling him that he was a failure as a husband and father, and as such, a failure as a man. I told him that he had the opportunity to put things right and restore our family relationship, but he was too self-centered and greedy to ever want it. Rachel simply took me upstairs to my room and sat with me for a long time. I feel so thankful that I at least have my sister and my grandfather to watch out for me. Without them, I don't know what I would be doing. I don't even remember half of what I said because I lost control of myself at that moment. When I stopped, everyone was quiet. Going to happen next, but at least I know that I have support now, and that I am not wrong for refusing to accept my father's treatment of me, and his total disrespect and contempt for my mother's memories. Update 3 will be my last update for everyone who was hoping for a dramatic and tearful reconciliation between father and son. Aunt Edna tried every tactic in the book to stop Rachel from pressing charges against her, but Rachel is as unyielding as they come. Grandpa has moved in, and Dad has a month to move out, and he has been attempting to speak with me one-on-one, but I turn him down every time. In addition, Grandpa is keeping vigil, and my dad is so afraid of him that he isn't trying anything else. Returned all of Mom's belongings, which are still securely stored in my room. After Dad leaves, I intend to seal Mom's room, because I don't need the entire house to myself. In any case, many of you suggested that I seek therapy to deal with everything that has transpired. I also suggested this to Grandpa, and although he doesn't believe in it, he has given me money to get help, and Rachel has been visiting me every day to provide me with company. I hate that we were so far apart, but I know that she has always been watching out for me. She has stated that she will help me find a good therapist and that we can always hang out. This isn't a very happy update, but it looks like things will work out soon. I doubt I'll ever speak to my dad again, even though whether he experiences regret, which he doesn't. The trust has now been betrayed, and nothing on the planet is able to create the same as before.